The Scream Kings are in no way responsible for any encounters with the paranormal, extraterrestrial abductions, eldritch insanity, hauntings, hexes, curses, demonic possessions, cryptozoological sightings, or any loss of sleep from listening to this podcast.
Konnichiwa, and welcome to the Scream Kings podcast. I'm NJ Gallegos.
I'm Nathaniel Darkish.
And this is Max George.
That is the worst Godzilla roar I've ever heard.
I think mine was pretty accurate, you bastard.
Sure.
All I know is my vocal cords hurt.
All I know is that must be my new text alert. All three of us just making that noise.
Don't worry, I'll cut it and cut it down and send that to you just when I'm editing.
Perfect.
Friends, we are talking about Godzilla. I went down to the south. Godzilla Minus One today. Oh, I need more beer.
Nathaniel's most favorite movie.
It's definitely high on my list. It's probably my favorite movie of the year last year.
Yeah, you were horny for this film, dude.
Yeah,
Yes,
you were.
I am. And you know what? I stand by that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into it. This movie went hard. I was talking to a friend about it. And they also are in your same boat, Nathaniel, of just, why did this Godzilla movie go so hard and was so good? It kind of came out of nowhere, I think.
Yeah, like, so I saw it, in theaters back in December, and it was like not even on my radar. And then someone was like, "Oh, hey, there's a new Godzilla movie coming out. It's a Japanese one." I went, "Oh, well, I mean, maybe that'll be better than the American ones from the last few years. That Godzilla isn't the same size from frame to frame, and likes to hang out with his big gorilla buddy."
That movie was hard.
You'll have to be more specific than that. There's more than one now.
I know.
Unfortunately. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I've been disappointed by any American attempts at anything Godzilla, ever since Americans made attempts to make something Godzilla. But I wasn't the biggest fan of like Shin Godzilla, which was like, kind of a semi-reboot of the series from a few years ago that Japan had. A lot of people liked, but it just didn't really do it for me. But so I was like, I don't know. At the very least, like, it'll probably be like a fun like theater movie. And I cried openly in the theater.
Did you need to get it together? I did not cry at all.
What?
I felt
This movie always makes me cry.
I felt things, and it was like, oh, but I think I just cry so much, perhaps. I don't get it out in movies.
The well was dry.
That could be it.
With what's going on in my life, the well is barren. So, but yeah, do we want to say much more about it, or should we just dive into this masterpiece?
We should give it like a brief plot summary.
Hit it, NJ.
Ooh.
I love your summaries. They're my favorite.
Thank you. I do what I can. I'm gonna preface this with I don't remember anybody's name. So, just putting that out there.
Okay,
Other than Godzilla.
I'll fill in names as you're doing it because I got the cast list in front of me.
Thank you. A failed kamikaze pilot comes... What?
Koichi Shishima.
Koichi Shishima.
Fun
comes...
fact, Koichi is one of the Digidestin in the 4th Digimon series.
What?
That's how I remembered his name. Anyway, continue.
I don't need your off-brand Pokemon. Anyway.
Whoa! I will kill you.
Let's go. Failed kamikaze pilot watches an entire unit get wiped out by Godzilla and returns to a war-torn Japan trying to make his way in the world, and he and a gang that I would describe as the Japanese Golden Girls that I want to have a sitcom.
Yes.
They come across a new and improved monster Godzilla and realize it's coming for their home.
Dun dun dun!
He also is sort of formed a ragtag family with just a girl who showed up with a baby one day and moved in. Noriko, and the little girl's name is Akiko.
She's adorable, by the way.
Akiko,
oh yeah.
Oh my god. If had Akiko died, I would have raged.
Yeah, I think the whole world just would have been like, no, that didn't happen, no.
Don't forget the sassy neighbor, too.
Oh, I did like the sassy neighbor.
And also, Sumiko, who is the sassy neighbor who blames Koichi for everything, for failing. Yeah, he not being a successful kamikaze pilot is why they lost the war, and why all of her loved ones died.
Does that make sense?
She was going through some stuff.
It's true.
Yeah, she has a heart of gold.
She does.
Yep. And yeah, so they all come together, and then the Japanese people have to band together kind of independently of their government to try to take out Godzilla.
And through the power of bubbles and balloons, they do it.
And friendship.
And a rocket.
I want to ask one question before we start.
Yes.
What are Godzilla's pronouns? Because I really don't know.
So Godzilla is male in this. There's only
Okay.
like one instance of a female Godzilla that I'm aware of, which was the Matthew Broderick movie from like 1999 or 97 or whatever it was.
I did see that, and that soundtrack is fire.
That's the only thing that's fired about that movie, unfortunately.
Not untrue.
What if we watched Girl Godzilla and Boy Godzilla smoosh booties and make little Godzilla babies?
Aww.
Well, apparently that girl Godzilla doesn't even need to smoosh booties because she lays eggs everywhere in that movie.
Well, I think our love story between Boy and Girl Godzilla is better. Hollywood, we have the meats.
Or Godzilla's got the meats, if you know what we mean.
Oh.
All right, now that we've parsed that out, let's dive into what really makes this movie phenomenal.
Yeah. I should mention it was directed and written by Takashi Yamazaki, and it totally won an Oscar for visual effects. And one of my favorite facts is that when the crew came up to accept their Oscars, they were all wearing like Godzilla heels that they had like 3D printed and like put on their shoes. It was awesome.
Iconic.
Yes. But yeah, no, let's talk about the good things about the movie other than just how delightful those people are.
One thing I enjoyed very much is how it made me feel human emotions again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was talking to Mark about this, and he really enjoyed the film, but not quite as much as me, but he had this kind of moment where he really kind of understood and appreciated the Japanese style of storytelling. I think sometimes when we have American movies, especially, big kaiju destroying the town, Kong and Godzilla team up to fight Ghidorah or whatever. It's all about the destruction and the death and the cool effects and the blah and the boom and the bang. And this Godzilla really slowed down. There were some incredible destructive scenes, but really it was a story about like love and forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really beautiful and poetic.
Well, it makes you care,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of times, giant monster movies forget to have any sort of human connection for us, the audience, right? It's just about how many times can we watch Godzilla blow something up or get punched or punch someone in the face. And this is it's very human, it's very earnest, it really does kind of give us characters to root for. It shows us their flaws as well as, you know, the things that we love about them. And so yeah, like I loved this idea that our protagonist is a failed kamikaze pilot. You know, he couldn't do it. He couldn't kill himself in service of the war, and was too afraid to try to kill Godzilla when he was much smaller, to save those other men on that island.
Well, and that's something that we just don't really hear about here in the States is, you know, there were these kamikaze pilots in Japan, you know, that was almost a thing of honor. So what?
No, almost about it. Like, yeah, and that didn't just extend to the kamikaze pilots, right? That was kind of just the honorable way to handle war, was fight to the last person. You know, women and children fight, you know, to the death.
Right. I mean, kamikaze itself means divine wind in Japanese, and so this juxtaposition, though, in this film of, you know, this quote unquote, let's call him a knight, failed to do what he was supposed to do, and that's why, you know, the neighbor is so sassy, and it might be hard for us to understand why he feels such turmoil about failing, but it's this cultural just difference, and it was really refreshing. And to see Japan after the atomic bombs dropped, you know, here in America it was a victory, but not there.
Right.
Yeah, over I think it was 200,000 people died. 200,000. That's literally like 100 times more people who died in 9/11. It's this, you know, massive tragedy, and on top of that, you know, that was just the bombs getting dropped,
Right.
and or just, you know, the A bombs being dropped, but you know, all of the other destruction, and so then, yeah, taking that and then going, hey, what would it be like, you know, what was it like for the Japanese to be at their lowest point, to have to rebuild, to have to find hope again, to have to find meaning again, especially with the weight of their government having them told every citizen, kill yourself in service of victory, die honor, you know, with honor, or, you know, or live in shame, and then being told you now have to go on and live as a conquered people. That's profoundly difficult, and like, you know, those are themes that are hard to tackle in any piece, and then seeing those tackled so well in a Godzilla movie where they're at their lowest point already and then Godzilla shows up, that's so brilliant to me. Like, that's what that's why I just went from, you know, like, just jaw dropped loving this movie, because it's such an interesting, unique perspective to bring to any story, and then plugging it into giant monster destroys Tokyo and pulling that off. Oh, I was stunned.
Nailed it.
This was all coming, though, from, you know, 3 white Americans, right? I would love to sit someone down from Japan after they watch this film and really kind of see how it speaks to them and their perspective, especially someone who perhaps lived, you know, circa World War II and everything that happened, and just how different the movie would impact them versus our 3 white asses. Because it was so profound for us, right? Like,
yeah.
we were moved by this film. I can only imagine how it would touch someone who possibly lived through something like that.
Well, the thing that I really liked about this is, I think, like, you know, as Americans, you know, we learn this history and whatnot, and we're taught a glorified version where we're the good guys, we're the saviors, everybody else is bad, right? They're evil. It's kind of like a dichotomy, strict dichotomy. And then you watch this movie and you see, like, these people, they were just caught up in something that was far larger than them. They're just a cog in the machine, and they're almost powerless against it, you know? They may not agree, but they have to do it.
Well, it's one of those things too, that, you know, wars are fought between generals and commanders and soldiers, but there are civilians who who have to deal with the ramification.
Exactly.
Right? It's corny and cheesy, but I've been rewatching Game of Thrones, and there's a line where, you know, all of this war is going on, and they're talking about who's gonna sit on this throne, and this peasant guy is just like, I don't care. Is my family safe? Do I have food? Do I have this? Like, that's what's important to me. And I think Godzilla Minus One kind of really brought that to the front of war is bigger than just who wins.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like, how often do we see movies about, you know, the cleanup after any war, right? Like, oh, hey, we filled the whole ocean full of landmines. We get to go blow those all up now, and that's someone's job, and every day they could die doing it. Like, we don't have that many stories about this kind of thing, and I think that's a missed opportunity, because often that is the untold horrors of a war, is the cleanup, the living afterward with dead family, you know, everyone that you knew and cared about that's gone now. And on top of that, having to rebuild, having to have hope, having to have a job, having to have really scary jobs. That's so interesting, and yeah, it's never what a war story is about, and this, to me, is more honest depiction of war than, you know, what we usually get.
And then throw a megaton lizard that shoots laser beams.
Yeah.
That is a symbol for the destruction that our country caused, right? Godzilla is clearly representative of the atom bombs. And watching that laser beam hit those cities and seeing that mushroom cloud explosion just kind of broke my heart.
Well, and not just the atom bombs that we dropped, but the fact that we then went on to make way more powerful ones. You know, that he grows big not because of a, you know, a normal atom bomb, but because of a hydrogen bomb, and that, you know, that the world had moved on, so that the destruction that we had already seen was small in comparison to what was now capable.
And I think it is really good insight for future generations to really remember the destruction. We got a brilliant film with Oppenheimer, kind of about the creation, but I think this film really substantiates that story a little bit more in showing, you know, we did what the country thought was right at the time. Here was the consequence. And I think if you pair Oppenheimer and Godzilla Minus One, as crazy as that sound, together, it gives you a really profound look through history at what this did. Ugh, gives me chills talking about, because it just breaks my heart.
Yep.
Talk about a double feature, man.
Yeah, forget Barbenheimer. Let's go to Godzillaheimer. or Oppenzilla.
Oh, Oppenzilla's much better.
Yes, it is.
Oppenzilla Minus One.
And then Barbie after for a nice palate cleanser.
Yeah, Barbie is amazing, honestly.
Facts.
What else do we really like about this? We've talked a lot about the poetry behind the film, but let's maybe go into the cinema itself.
For me, I found the sound effects to be absolutely amazing.
Oh, so good. The music?
Yeah, everything, the score, the music, and then the part that literally gave me the chills was whenever they are bringing Godzilla back up and it gets absolutely, like, silent. You know, nothing. And it just, I don't know, it adds more weight to the moment, the gravity of the moment. It kind of reminded me of The Last Jedi, when she does the Holdo maneuver, which is, like, probably one of my favorite things from The Last Jedi.
I really enjoyed the kind of the sound effects too when he was charging up the laser beam.
Yeah.
And then the, you know, the spinal plates or whatever they are kind of charging and then slamming into his body. And then again, you had that, like, the air stops and all sound disappears for a fraction of a second, and then wha-bam!
Yeah, and I loved the roars. It sounded very organic, but also just, like, incomprehensible. Just something that big and powerful and loud. also really loved the visual effects, of course. Like, holy cow, Godzilla looked so freaking good. You know, he is huge, he's intimidating, he's genuinely like scary just because he is so powerful and just doesn't care, right? Like it's not like malice as much as it is just like, oh, I'm an animal, like I'm just walking around. Oh, this stuff is annoying. I'm gonna stomp on it. But like the gravity of something that big and powerful is in its own way kind of scary, but then also just like looked good. It wasn't like, oh hey, look at that CGI monster like we get with the American movies of the last few years. Um, and
Yeah.
and let's talk about the fact that they did that, this Oscar award winning, visual effects on a tiny, tiny, tiny budget for a movie like this, right? Um, so I because of my obsession with this movie, I did like some research into this and like watched all sorts of special featurey kind of things. So the budget was $15 million, and if you want some like context, the like 2017 American Godzilla movie just called Godzilla that had like Bryan Cranston in it for like 3 minutes, but was in all of the ads. That movie had a budget of $180 million.
Oh.
So more than 10 times more. And this movie looks better and won, in fact, the Oscar for how good it looks. And most of the budget was spent on just making the effects work. But
and Godzilla swimming through the water after the boat, and you got like the close up of the eyes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the slither, kind of like that slither.
That was fucking real.
Oh, yeah.
It was nuts.
Exactly. It looked very organic, and my question was, okay, so how did it, like, why did it look so much better? And what it kind of boiled down to, and what the team talked about, kind of in a thing, like an interview after getting the Oscar, was that their approach was very different than a lot of these massive budget Hollywood things, because instead of having this huge team of thousands of animators animating every little tiny section of Godzilla and all that kind of stuff, they had about like, I don't know, 15 people working on it. But instead of it being like, oh, going up the chain whenever stuff is worked on, and all of this gets turned into a supervisor, which then gets turned into a producer and another producer, and then it eventually gets to the director. The director was in the room watching them do stuff. So they would animate stuff, and they would like pull him over and go, okay, so I'm thinking this for the movement of the arm, and he would look at it and go, oh yeah, I like that. Oh, here, let's try this thing, just this little tweak. And that way the director's vision for it was happening in real time. He was seeing it, he was involved in that process, and it wasn't just this like kind of person on a pedestal who gets to see the finished product 6 months later after going through a chain of 30 people. Instead it was just like he was literally just there in the room watching them animate it, because
I love that.
and that was what made the difference. And they're like, no, like if we had done it kind of the more traditional way, he would have seen the finished product, but instead he got to help us make the decisions. He was involved in that process, and we got to make his vision come to life, because it's a lot easier to do that if you can turn to him and at worst yell across the room and say, hey, come here, look at this thing on my screen. So love that approach too, that it was such a much more personal approach to the filmmaking.
Yeah, that's really cool. I feel like we can learn from that.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, wink wink.
Well,
friendship again, teamwork, friendship.
Yeah, we have the meats.
Speaking of friendship, I really liked all of the characters, even though I can't remember their names. I really enjoyed all of the characters. Like we talked, Akiko, I do remember Akiko. Like, why didn't that kid get an Oscar? That kid knows how to act.
right?
First off, like, wow. And then I just love the, like, buddy, just the kind of the buddy comedy, the drama and whatnot that comes with the cast of the guys on the boat. You know, you have the doctor, the captain, the kid, and then the failed kamikaze pilot. Like, Golden Girls, we're missing out here. They could like be retired talking about Godzilla and living in a condo in Tokyo. I'm just saying.
That doctor is me in an alternate universe, so help me God. I loved him.
Oh, he was the best part of the movie, honestly.
Oh,
He
so
was
good.
So fun. So fun.
And the hair, my God. Like,
Right?
what are you putting in there?
Yeah, I want to meet his stylist and get them to work.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned it a little bit, but I do think that the opening of the film really set the tone for the movie.
Oh, yeah.
With the kamikaze pilot, and you know, you're not quite sure what's going on, but Koichi lands on this island. He's meeting with these engineers, and everything seems pretty chill. He's clearly lying about his mission. And then just Godzilla comes, and he's like, "Okay, guys, fuck off." And the panic and the fear, though, that the director was able to capture in that opening scene, and you know, Koichi being in his plane, almost able to shoot or attack or do something, and he doesn't. Like, this fear paralysis really spoke to me throughout the rest of the film. It was visceral, it was authentic, and it's why you cared about him. You wanted him to overcome whatever was going on.
Yeah.
Would those guns have, like, actually, do you think they would have actually hurt Godzilla at that time?
Yeah, my thought is that he maybe could have killed Godzilla because he was a little baby Godzilla.
But he regenerates. So,
I think
like, maybe he would just regenerate and then everybody's dead and movie's done.
I think the regenerating is a kind of more of a feature that happened because of the exposure to the radiation of the H-bombs.
Fine.
That's my theory, but I mean, again, like, yeah, we don't really know. And that's what I love, is that we don't know, because you know, he has to live with that guilt too of not knowing, of like, hey, could he have stopped it right there and then and saved all these lives, or would it have been, you know, all for naught, and he would have pulled that trigger and then just would have been dead too.
Right.
We don't know, he doesn't know, but he gets to live the guilt of assuming that it is, you know, that he could have saved all those men and then saved all of the other people affected by Godzilla when it showed back up. Dude's got some guilt.
Dude needed to go to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they would do on my Golden Girls spinoff.
Yeah.
I did love that the scientists, their plan of attack to kill Godzilla wasn't to blow him up. It was to use science.
Yes,
That
me too.
was kind of a brilliant twist. The science was a bit questionable, I think. We can get into that in the cons, but it also just felt like a very Japanese trope of like, okay, guys, this is what we're gonna do, and it's gonna work. And I just like, yeah, it is gonna work. This is awesome.
Yeah, it. So after we're done talking about Minus One, I want to talk about a little bit about the original Godzilla and kind of draw some parallels there, because they use a kind of sciencey way to take out Godzilla in the original movie, but it felt a lot more grounded in this, and I liked it. So
yeah. Anything else we wanted to mention as far as the good? I mean, really, this film is incredible. If you have not seen it, it's on Netflix. Very accessible to watch.
yeah, and I heard that the minus color version is going to be added to Netflix soon too, which is cool, because it's, you know, and it feels like you're watching an old Godzilla movie.
The one scene that really, like, I think that probably started most of my waterworks was whenever they're trying to pull Godzilla up and they realize they don't have enough power to do so. And then all of the other, like, little boats come to help. Like, it reminds me, like, it's like Dunkirk, you know, if you've seen that movie. it's like a very powerful part. Like other people are coming to sacrifice to help with their nation, you know?
It also reminded me of Rise of Skywalker too, where
Mm-hmm.
say what you want to say about the sequels, but that moment where you see all of these iconic ships coming to help save the day, the nostalgia and just the camaraderie. Ugh.
I know. Ugh, gets me.
Yes. Well, it didn't get me enough to cry. Okay, should we shift over into some of the things that perhaps we either didn't like or thought could be improved upon?
I mean, yes. I did have to kind of stretch further to have things I didn't like, right? Like, part of me just wants to go, no, it's a perfect movie. There's nothing wrong with it. I will fight you. But, I mean, okay, like, the pacing was a little weird sometimes.
I do think that was related to just kind of Japanese storytelling. I watch a lot of anime, and it drives Mark crazy because they take so long with their storytelling. And this film felt very anime in some parts, where it kind of felt like a little filler episode in between the actual plot.
Yeah.
But I agree. There were moments where I was like, okay, let's go, guys. We got a Godzilla to go take care of.
Yeah. And admittedly, some of the pacing thing honestly just kind of boils down to the idea that they actually are pulling more from a different type of storytelling structure. Like,
For sure.
So, we think of things in like 3-act structure, 7-point structure, Save the Cat structure. Like these are kind of the ones that go into a lot of the films and books and stuff like that we consume in Western culture. But it's this very different way of doing things, and so yeah, like the same thing happens with, I don't know, watching My Neighbor Totoro. You're like, wow, this is just kind of like a meandering, like pondering movie. Well, yeah, it's going to do that sometimes. That's kind of how Japanese stories work. So yes, I think that's a big part of it. But there were a few parts where I'm like, oh, does this scene need to be quite this long?
Well, and I think for who I watched it with, they weren't really in tune with the Godzilla movies. They weren't super big fans of it. They weren't familiar with Japanese storytelling. And one of them fell asleep through the movie and said he was very bored throughout it. And I think this speaks to American versus Japanese storytelling. I don't think we can really hold it against the film.
Yes.
I'm just saying, as a con to the movie, it's not going to speak to everyone.
I agree.
Especially if you're just so used to, the Captain America kind of a story.
I agree.
Well, and kind of piggybacking off of that, I would say, like, I watched this with my wife who doesn't really know anything about Godzilla. So she was like, okay, how did Godzilla happen? Like, why does he have these powers? And I had to talk about the, nuclear war parallels, atom bomb, all that fun stuff. But I think adding maybe a little bit of backstory would have just been, I don't know, kind of nice. Like, I just like to know why, why is Godzilla massive?
I fully agree with that because you know me, I love a good explanation.
Mm-hmm.
I think for this film, I preferred not knowing, oddly enough. I felt like it was more of a threat, that they just have to deal with this mega lizard.
Mm-hmm.
That shoots a heat ray.
Yeah.
And regenerates.
I see where you're coming from because I also, we had the conversation of boy Godzilla and girl Godzilla and where are the baby Godzillas? And is it an endotherm or an ectotherm?
Is it so much to just be asked that we have a little, like, we get separated boys and girls and we talk about periods and stuff? Like, is it?
Yeah, yes.
Godzilla maturation class midway through the movie.
Make sure your parents sign that permission slip.
I would be glued to that TV screen.
Likewise. I'm sure Pornhub has something similar. You can go look there.
Be right back.
You guys might hate me for this. I thought when Noriko came back alive, I felt that was kind of dumb. I think that cheapened the narrative.
Well, and she only has, like, her eye covered. Like, you were in a fucking building that was getting absolutely demolished. Like, come on.
Yeah, I like a tragic end to a movie. I think they're more real, and I think it cheapens what Koichi did. I get it. You know, the act of love and choosing to live rather than die. I get it. um didn't make sense to me. I felt like it was a token thrown at the audience to have a happy ending.
I mostly agree. Yeah, at the very least, she should have been way more messed up.
Oh,
Or
for
dead.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Or just dead. She knocked him out of the way and shrapnel shot into her body.
Oh, yeah, that's what happened. Shit. It's been a while since I saw the movie.
It wasn't like she fell down and poked her eye. She pushed Koichi into the alley.
And then got blasted back by a nuclear. Yeah.
It's a corneal abrasion. It's fine.
I mean, admittedly, it had been several months at that point, so she could have, healed quite a bit. But presumably, she was unconscious in some sort of coma for a while. But
presumably, the shockwave of the explosion should have ripped her skin off.
I agree. I'm just saying it wasn't like she just got like a little like scrapey scrape and was fine. I'm saying like she was unable to communicate for several months at the very least. I will give them that, but I agree like she probably should have had like severe radiation burns all over her body at the very, very least.
Or maybe she's like a human Godzilla with a nuclear mutation.
Or to add on top of that, what if she just died? I just felt like it would have made Koichi's sacrifice and his decision just that more impactful. He did it for her, not because she was alive, but because he wanted to live. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, like it was like he made the decision to move forward and live, and then he magically got a reward. Yes, like I agree.
Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Oh, I was just gonna say that another thing that I thought was kind of interesting and maybe didn't work as well as maybe they were hoping was how long it took to show us the packet of photos that he's given. Like, they could have just like straight up showed it to us like that's what was handed to him when he was on the boat, rather than, hey, he has this like weird thing he's carrying around that we're not going to see. Like, I figured it was probably something like photos of all the dead guys, and it was.
It's Pokemon cards, Digimon cards.
Yes, both. Thank you.
He was burdened by the holographic Mewtwo that he had to carry with him.
And the sexy Angemon card that he found.
Angemon, huh?
Well, Angemon, I guess. Angemon. Look him up. NJ, you'll fall in love.
How do you spell that?
Angemon.
It's an angel Digimon.
Not wearing a shirt.
Oh, he's kind of sexy.
I told you! Another thing I thought was kind of silly, and Nathaniel, I think you're going to give us some background to this, but
yes,
they made a lot of assumptions about some megaton creature that lives in the ocean. Of like, oh, if we put him at the very bottom of the ocean, then he'll die. I would have been the kid in the audience who would have raised my hand and be like, but he's a giant lizard who lives in the ocean already. Do we not think like his biology has evolved to withstand those kind of pressures?
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe what it was trying to suggest was less that it was that he can't withstand the pressures, but that he can't handle the change in pressure that quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like, pulling a blobfish out of the bottom of the ocean, it turns into a weird blob instead of it being a, normal fish. So I think that was probably just like the rate of decompression was, in theory, the thing that was going to be doing the damage more than anything else. But yeah, like, I think they could have...
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because the balloon situation was only if Godzilla was still alive. They were going to push him to the bottom of the ocean, and if he died then, that's fine. But if he was still showing vital signs, then they would pull him up, and hopefully the pressure change would kill him.
Well, yeah, so I think it was pressure, compression going down would kill him. If not, then decompression going up would kill him. Yeah.
Right. Regardless, he's a megaton monster who lives in the ocean. Maybe we should think about this again.
Fair.
To be fair, anything with vertebrae or a spine that is that far in the ocean will die. So, Godzilla, you did it.
Yeah.
Good for Godzilla.
Yeah, perhaps.
My only gripe about the Godzilla design is Godzilla needed the cute little ears.
No.
Like, come on. They are so cute. Yes. It's canon.
That's fair. I just am imagining that scene where he's chasing them in the ocean with that scary face, and then the two little...
It would be so cute. It would be adorable.
My biggest gripe about this film was there was no Mothra. I know it was a Godzilla film. I know he was the star, but there wasn't even a hint of Mothra.
Well, maybe this is just setting up Mothra Minus One.
Oh, so help me. Ugh, I love Mothra. Mothman, Mothra, Moth babies. Let's make it happen.
Ooh.
Mothra is a queen.
True. Slay. Hunty, the boots down house.
I felt like I just had a stroke.
Oh, watch some Drag Race, Nathaniel. You'll be fine.
I just choked on my spit. Oh, that was good. Thank you.
I do want to postulate something here.
Okay.
I know we bring this up quite often. I know it was a kaiju film.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was a monster film.
Mm-hmm.
I would not categorize this in the horror sphere. This to me was like a apocalyptic drama. Which, as I say that out loud, sounds like a horror movie. But I don't know, I didn't get any sort of horror vibe from it. There was no, what were the three things we talked about before, Nathaniel? Like the gross out factor, the fear factor, and then I just...
The terror, the horror, and the gross out.
Yeah, I didn't quite get any of that. I mean, terror, perhaps.
Yes.
But it was like existential terror. I think the real terror was what was happening in Japan at the time, not so much the Godzilla,
Mm-hmm.
which would put it under, like, Saving Private Ryan for me, or Dunkirk, where there's terror, but it's not horror terror, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the human condition terror. Like, yeah.
And that's fine. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just, as I was reading our notes and kind of thinking about the film, other than the giant monster and it being a creature feature, I would not categorize this as a horror film. I would not tell someone, if they're looking for a horror movie, I would not say this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Usually, yeah, when we're going to a horror film, we're looking for a certain kind of feel, right? And this movie doesn't really deliver on that. Yeah, it feels kind of more like historical drama, human drama, action for sure. But
Sci-fi.
yeah, sci-fi definitely. I will say that this movie kind of, there were a few moments in it that did sell me on the idea of kaiju movies being potentially horror movies a little bit more than a lot of other kaiju movies do.
Oh, 100%. I love kaiju films. They're so fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually not horror, right? I think of them as like Gundam or, whatever. This one was different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah, and so, like, there were a few moments where I did see the horror of Godzilla, but they were just moments. It was the destruction of the train. Was I think a moment of horror for me. But, again, it wasn't like the usual I'm scared in my seat. It's kind of more the cosmic horror of, holy cow, how could something like this exist? It's overwhelming.
Sure.
and feels not only like anything you do against it is insignificant, but is just I guess it's insignificant and meaningless, and I think that is the intended sort of horror that we see, and like that's also present in the original Godzilla, and I know that the intent when they made the original Godzilla was to make a horror film that explored the ramifications of, hey, we want to make something that is the equivalent of us feeling horror at the existence of the H-bomb. And so, like, through that specific lens, like, yes, it is technically a horror film, but yeah, like, when people are like, I'm going to sit down and watch a horror movie, this isn't, I wouldn't say that this is exclusively for a horror crowd by any means or anything like that. It feels very different than most horror movies. I 100% agree.
People need to watch it. I'm not saying they should,
yes,
because it's not horror, but yeah. Anyway, let's give it our ratings. What do we think?
So, screams. So how scary is this movie? 2, 3?
Yeah, I gave it a 2. Again, it's not like I wasn't scared. There were moments where I was like, oh shit, but not. Ah!
Yeah. I love the way that you paint a picture for us with your words.
Thank you.
It's so eloquent.
I know. I'm taking classes. Now, crowns. I gave it an 8. I really enjoyed the film. I'm very stingy with my 9s and my 10s. I think everyone should watch this film, especially the up-and-coming generation, as old as that makes me sound. It is really beautiful and breathtaking, but I don't know if I'd rewatch it anytime soon. And I wasn't, like, at the end of it just like, oh, wow, my life has changed. And I didn't cry, so...
Does a tear bump your rating up 1?
Maybe. We'll have to see.
Well, unlike Max, I cried my eyes out because I have a lot of feelings, and I'm giving it a 9. It really hit a lot of notes for me. I'm really big into learning about World War II, so the fact that it follows, post World War II, and like we talked about, the outcome of Japan after everything, I enjoyed quite a bit. I love the human aspect, but I'm not a big, like, kaiju person. Like, I've seen, like, the 1999 Godzilla, which I don't think really counts, and just, like, bits and pieces of old ones, but I found it to be extremely enjoyable, and I give it a 9.
And unsurprisingly, based on my level of zeal for this movie ever since I've seen it, I'm giving this one a 10. I'm in love with this movie. I've seen it probably like 4 or 5 times since it's come out.
Oh, damn.
I keep showing it to people, and every time it still hits my emotions. Like, I have cried like every time I've seen this movie. It gets me. It really gets me down deep. It's easily one of my favorite movies of all time now.
Would you say that this movie is like the Nadia Comaneci of movies, since you gave it a perfect 10?
I don't know what that means.
It's an Olympic.
All right, lesbian. Simmer down and speak to the men.
I like to watch gymnastics, okay? I have for a very long time, and I realize it's very telling now that I look back on it. But
so my lesbian comment was apropos, is what you're saying.
It was actually extremely appropriate. So she was the first gymnast ever to be awarded a perfect 10 at the Olympics.
Yes.
Whatever, it doesn't even matter.
Now we know.
Yeah, you know what? One day you're gonna thank me when you're on a fucking Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and that's the question. So
Learning
Or
and
when I'm
growing.
Or I'm on a Zoom call with my coworkers and they're going to mention that. And I'll be like, oh yeah, did you know that they were the first person to get a 10?
you have to push your glasses up when you say it.
Absolutely. They were already up. Nathaniel, was there anything else you wanted to kind of parse out from the original?
Yes.
I know you had some notes.
Yes. So I just watched the original Godzilla like 2 nights ago. And I was bold, and I just bought myself the Criterion Blu-ray of it, and just hoped that it was going to be worth my time, and it was. I really like the original Godzilla. It has a lot of the same sort of beats, but at the end of the day, it does. And like this original, yeah, like the very first Godzilla movie, so it's 1954, does feel very similar in a lot of ways. Like, I would say, arguably Godzilla Minus One is really just kind of a remake of that film with a little bit of a different focus. We don't get the kamikaze pilot story or anything like that, but we do still see a lot of the same kind of beats. Like, we're approaching this problem more from a scientific method, because conventional weapons aren't working on Godzilla. It is coming up because of H-bomb stuff. The theory in that movie is that the H-bomb testing has disrupted its environment, so it had to leave. But yeah, the way that they kill Godzilla in that is basically like by an invention called the oxygen destroyer, which is
Sounds like an anime sword move.
Yeah.
right.
I shall kill you with the oxygen destroyer.
Yeah, so we have this like really fantastic scientist who's all like broody and has an eye patch. Who?
Ooh, eye patch. What about the hair? How is the hair?
It's fine. He's a young eye patched man who's like he is a veteran from the war, but yeah, so he makes the oxygen destroyer to defeat Godzilla, and so that's how they kill him, is by bombing him with the oxygen destroyer underwater. And then apparently that is what results in a lot of the other kaiju getting created in all of the sequel movies, is like, oh, exposure to the oxygen destroyer made this kaiju too that Godzilla then has to fight, which is actually like a second Godzilla anyway. But like the beats do feel very similar. There are some like scenes that kind of play out very much the same, and whenever like we have like heroic moments happening, it's actually the same musical theme as when like the ships in Minus One are trying to like do the maneuver to try to capture and sink Godzilla. It's this like really like fun like noble theme. Mm-hmm. The movie really does hold up very well. It looks really good. And even like some of like the very like small specific details, like him destroying a train, translated over into Minus One. The fact that like his like spikes on his back glow before he does his atomic breath was the same. There's a lot of stuff that really does feel very similar. So it's definitely worth checking out. I really enjoyed it. Definitely, I recommend watching it in the Japanese with subtitles instead of the not amazingly dubbed American release that was that came out a couple years later. Also, just an aside, did you guys know that the third Godzilla movie is when he first fought King Kong?
No.
Yeah, like
Nope.
The third Godzilla movie is Godzilla versus Kong.
When did that come out?
Like 58, 59? Wait, no, it was like 56.
Wow.
Huh. I love that Japan gets this like mega cool lizard that shoots laser beams and lives in the ocean, and we just have a fucking monkey.
Yep. Oh yeah,
I hate it.
63 is when it was. But yeah, that was the third Godzilla movie.
Huh.
But you know what a gorilla can do? They can poop in their hand and throw it, and imagine that poop.
Huh.
That's fair. That would be poop.
That's America, isn't it? Jesus.
Oh no. All right. Do you guys want to play a fun new game?
Ooh,
Yes.
I would love to play a game.
All right. So, I recently purchased an amazing book. It's called the Lemegeton. Lemegeton. I'm not quite sure how to say that.
Lee
I
Megaton.
Probably. It is the Lesser Key of Solomon, which I have, but I only have book 1 of the Lesser Key of Solomon. This has the Lesser Key of Solomon books 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it has the Ars Goetia, the Ars Thurgia, the Goetia, the Ars Paulina, the Ars Almelda, and the Ars Notoria.
Not to seem ignorant, but what exactly are you talking about?
All right, yeah, that's fine. So a lot of Christian demons are rooted in this legend that King Solomon, who built the temple in Jerusalem, had this magic ring that allowed him to bind demons to subjugate them to his will. So what he would do is summon these demons, subjugate them, and then his scribes would write kind of their personalities, their hierarchy in the hells, their powers, their abilities, and it became known as the Lesser Key of Solomon.
So like a demon encyclopedia.
Yes.
Exactly.
Got it.
Additionally, it has instructions on how to summon demons. And a lot of times when people want to summon demons, you see it in the horror movies of, with the Ouija boards and the tarot cards and all sorts of kind of crazy stuff. True historical demonic summoning comes from the Lesser Key of Solomon. And it is very ritualistic, very involved in Jewish occultism or the Kabbalah, and is very difficult to do. Aleister Crowley tried one of the rituals, and it took him like 3 months. He had to fast for weeks, recite prayers every hour on the hour specifically. He had to memorize these very complex sigils and symbols. And you have to do it at a certain time of the year and a certain time of the month.
Oh my
a certain
God.
Moon. It requires you to have a pelt of lion to make into a belt that you wear that holds a dagger made of silver, and you need like 500 pounds of available gold. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
To summon a demon is outrageously difficult.
So
Yeah.
like you can't really do it by accident.
No, not really. I mean,
Okay.
according to the historical sense. If you go ask any Christian evangelical, they'll be like, oh, you pooped the wrong way, you're possessed. Nathaniel, did I interrupt you?
Oh. No, I was just gonna say that there is like one, horror film that kind of, or that I've seen that sort of captures that, which was what
The Ritual.
or I thought it was like the something song.
Oh, it is.
A dark
it is.
song?
A dark song, yes. I love it.
Yes.
I haven't seen that one. I'll have to add it.
So good. It is very esoteric and very slow burner, but it is almost, it's a look into what Aleister Crowley tried to do. A dark song. You're right, Nathaniel.
Yeah, so that one is definitely worth your time if you want to kind of see what that would actually kind of entail.
Yes.
And then, I also just wanted to note that, like, all evidence seems to point towards, Solomon not having actually written the Lesser Key. It seems like it was, written at least, 2,000 years after him.
As is most scripture, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Pseudepigrapha.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of this was then, used, so a lot of these writings were probably from like the, around like year like 900, up to probably 1400, and then, ended up being kind of collected by the Catholic Church as, banned knowledge, and they used that to kind of write a lot of their own encyclopedias of the demonic and things like that.
Yeah, there's kind of this dichotomy when it comes to Solomon. You have, the darker occultists who believe he was this powerful demonologist, And then, of course, you have the more Christianity side of him who built the Temple of Jerusalem. It's a very enigmatic figure, and that's part of why I love it, that people can be more than one thing, believe it or not.
I never knew any of this. This is really interesting.
Ugh, I love demons so much. My next book that I really want to get is the Demoniac's Encyclopedia, which was from, I believe, the Renaissance, and they actually illustrated what each demon is supposed to look like, and it's glorious because they're insane. And I love them.
I love those drawings so much.
And then I really want to get the Malus Maleficarum, the Witch's Handbook from the Salem Witch Trials.
I saw a copy of that from like the 1400s in person, and it blew my mind.
I love it. So our game is we're going to play Demon Mystery Date. The two of you have picked numbers 1 through 72 from the first book of the Lesser Key of Solomon, and I'm just going to briefly describe them, and I want you to pick, based on the description, which demon you would go on a date with, all right?
I'm in.
Okay. Behind door number 69,
Oh!
Nice.
you'll find a shy, at first, little demon. He appears to be a star when he first manifests, but once he gains some confidence, they become the image of a man. They love bird watching and enjoy making all of the virtues of birds and gemstones. Can you say sugar daddy, animal lover? A great Marquis of Hell governing 30 hosts of demons. Say hello to contestant number 69. Behind door number 13, get ready to feel all your carnal pleasures with this contestant. A terrible and mighty king who will sweep you off your feet with his pale white horse, cat-like appearance, and musical instruments. His feline ferocity will be intense at first, but if you have a hazel wand and a ring of silver, he will fill your sexual desires to the climax until you've been fulfilled. Be courteous, though. This great king of hell commands 85 demons. So who are you guys going to pick?
13. Come on. No contest. You had me at cat-like appearance.
I knew it.
I'm sorry.
When I saw the image after you picked this demon, whose name is Beleth,
Ooh.
or Beleth, and it was a cat, I cackled out loud.
Well, and the musical instrument. So, like, is Beleth gonna play me like Wonderwall? Because that is a surefire way to get into my pants.
And he will get in your pants.
Oh.
This demon is like top 10 sexual demons. In the Lemegeton, it talks about he will satisfy all sexual desires, whether that be male, female, or anything that you wish.
Oh, so what you're saying is I can do my whole clone trooper thing that I got going on here.
Over and over and over.
13.
Door 69, Nathaniel, was Decarabia, who is much lower on the totem pole of the demon hierarchy. But they really love birds. So you have that.
Maybe you guys can look at some tits together.
1,000 points to your Hogwarts house.
I'm a Slytherin if that shocks you.
That doesn't even remotely shock me.
That was genius.
I'm gonna write that in my diary later.
All right, friends, how else are you staying spooky?
Well, I have read a couple of horror novels in the last bit. One of which was A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand, which is set in Hill House. So Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House. It's like the first kind of like authorized re-entry into that world. Came out last year before that, maybe. So I mean, pretty recently. It was good. I liked the characters. I liked the way that it handled Hill House for the most part, but it does have kind of the problem of, one, it's trying to stand up to one of the all-time great horror novels, and it's just look, Elizabeth Hand isn't Shirley Jackson, and that is what it is. And also, like 95% of the scary bits were in the last like 25 pages, which is kind of, look, there's slow burn and then there's whatever that is. But I liked it. Like, I liked the characters. I thought it was well written. The other book that I read recently that I wanted to talk about is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. It was interesting. Basically, it's a book about a movie that was never released, called appropriately Horror Movie, and it seems like it has all this kind of all these like rumors about it, and it would have been one of those all-time great horror movies, but but there was issues that caused it to not get finished, and then it's kind of gets revived, and maybe there's something really bad about that. So it's a fun book. It's definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of Tremblay. I liked it. I liked both of these books, but I wasn't in love with either of them, and I wanted to love both of them. So anyway, that's what I've read recently.
Well, I started The Dead Spot by our previous guest, Angela Sylvain, and I'm loving it so far. But recently, and I don't know if you can call it a horror, but I'm going to, as a Colorado transplant to the Midwest, we went and saw Twisters. And it was very good. I am a Twister fangirl, so I didn't have high expectations going in. But I would honestly probably give it a 9. And then the cast they're utter smoke shows. Like, it made me doubt my sexuality very much. So go look that up. And yes, go see it because it was amazing.
I am staying spooky by reading The Book of Bill. One of my all-time favorite cartoons, as well as my daughter's favorite cartoon, is Gravity Falls, which is a masterpiece and probably one of the top 3 number 10s I would give anything in this planet. Our dog is named Dipper because of the show. The main character is named Dipper.
Oh.
There is an evil entity who is transdimensional, who is a socio and psychopath, and is the antagonist throughout the entire show. He's unhinged and wants to destroy everything, and in the show, these two twins seal him away. The author decided to bring him back in this very tongue-in-cheek book that is so bizarre and terrifying and spooky, and people believe that it is kind of a hint that maybe there's a new season or a revamp of the show on its way. And we are very excited. The first page says, "This book's new master is," and then my name. "To summon Bill, place your hand on the right page, clear your mind, and repeat the words, 'Time to get weird.'" So
that sounds like your wedding vows.
Bill is amazing, and in the show you'll see these eyes everywhere, and my daughter, when she was little, would always point at the eyes and say, "Oh, there's Bill." And that has now progressed into real life. If she sees an eyeball anywhere in society or on her dollar bills, it's, "Dad, how did Bill get in the money?" Kind of a
dollar bills.
So it's wonderful. That's how I'm staying spooky.
Excellent. Okay, well, I guess, is there anything else we need to cover before we wrap this episode up?
I think we need to say stay spooky, but if we were Godzilla.
Okay. Stay spooky?
No, ready? 3 Godzilla? 3, 2, 1.
Stay spooky.
Stay spooky.
Stay spooky.